Welcome to the Friday at 4 podcast series with your host Charles Luttrell and co-host Steve Kent.
Steve, good afternoon. Welcome back to Friday at 4. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chuck. How are you?
Hanging in there. A little tired this week. It's been a pretty busy week. Yourself?
Good, good. Similar.
Yeah.
It was a mix between like like any job or business that you own. There are days you have your ups and the days that have your downs. But the key is when you get that downer and somebody like kind of smacks you in the head, it's can you get back up and how quickly do you get back up? So that's really the key. But by the end of the week, yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm tired.
I get it. Yeah, I saw some of your posts. You've been pretty busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got involved in some new networking group in the town that I live in, which is really cool. The person who's running it's doing a great job, but it requires more time than I have. So I'm trying to look at my calendar going, okay, what's on the calendar that while it's there, is it really helping my business or is it a nice to have? And if it's they're nice to have and there's really no return over a period of time, I'm starting to get those out of my calendar and putting new things in.
That's why I kind of gave up the networking groups. They don't really work for me,
Hmm.
you know. I'm sure I'm going to find one eventually that's going to, hopefully help me out. But, right now I'm trying to really stay focused, laser focused.
Which is good, which is good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, before we get into our topic, when it comes to like networking groups, I was very into during the COVID and the post-COVID years
Yeah.
that Zoom, 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 Zoom. But over the last, I don't know, let's call it a year, give or take,
Yeah.
I've gone out back into a couple of in-person groups,
Yeah.
and there really is a lot to be said for it. Because now when you sit across the table, you can look somebody in the eye instead of like, the little box on the screen. You can shake
Right.
hands, fist bump, elbow, whatever you do. And it
Spit
really,
food on each other.
among other things, but okay. But you can do a lot of things that you really can't in Zoom.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
Gets you
true.
out of the house, get away from the computer. So it does have some good benefits to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, I digress.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into this article that I sent to you earlier in the
Okay.
week. And I'm glad you wanted to cover this topic as well because I like it. I think it has merit, you know. Um, so they're saying employees who put in more than 11-hour workdays are 67% more likely to have a heart attack.
Great.
And those who work more than 54 hours a week are at higher risk of dying from this term, from Japanese term called Karoshi. I don't know how many people have heard of that. I never heard of it until I saw this article. I thought it was very interesting how the World Health Organization reports that over 745,000 deaths a year from stroke and heart attack in 2016. It's huge. Of
It's
course, all this data comes from the Forbes article that I read.
right.
And it's a huge article. And of course, it goes into a lot of detail about a lot of different stats. So I think that's enough for us to cover right there in our 20 to 30 minutes that we talk because, while the Americans don't have a terminology for Karoshi, they're going to continue to use the Japanese term Karoshi because it fits, it has merit because a lot of people, and there's no age range with this, a lot of people are dying from Karoshi. They're overworking themselves to death. They're
Yep.
literally dying in the office.
If you take a look, this is a general statement, I'm not saying you specific, but general statement. If you take a look at the U.S. worker versus other countries, in many of those countries, they're doing the 40-hour weeks. They're taking 6 weeks vacation. I'm not saying they're not working hard because I'm sure they are. But if they're doing that, why are we not? Why are we working, to your point before, a couple minutes ago? Why are we working the 60, 70, 80 hour weeks? Why are we, dying of the heart attacks? Part of it is self-imposed. Part of it is employer imposed. Part of it is we're all afraid of our jobs because with the economy, there's 1,000 people that want our job. There's a whole bunch of
Yes.
reasons why.
Yeah.
And it just, over time, like you said, people get exhausted. They start doing and saying silly things. The work suffers, the work life, the home life, everything suffers.
Yeah.
Um, eh,
And and I'm sure that age plays a part in that as well because, now I'm 55. As the years are rolling by, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling more tired as the days and the weeks go by.
mhm.
Yeah, I'm working hard, I'm doing more, but I don't think I've ever felt this stressed and this burnt out, that I've ever had in my life. I ran a business before. I've never felt this burnt out. So is it age? Yeah, yes, no. Is it working hard? Yes. I'm up at 4 and I don't go to bed till 10.
I think and again, I am not a doctor. Let me put that out there also. I'm not a
We're
doctor.
not doctors.
Not at all. So again, I repeat this. I've said it before. We're going to repeat this again. This is just two guys giving our opinions. We are not medical. We are not licensed to do this stuff, but this is our opinions. So just to cover our bases. Okay. So to me, there's a whole bunch of things that come into play. One, yes, is age. You're almost 55. Um, Next week I'm going to be 68. Yes, I'm old. Okay. But it's also how you feel. I don't feel 68. I feel much less, which is a good thing. But physically, over time, you do start to slow down. You do start to wear out. You do. So when you start factoring in things like hours, responsibility, um, to the job, to the family, to yourself, the economy, like we said before, there is so many people looking for your job. If you don't perform, you could go out. However, in reality, yes, a company could say, hey, Steve, thanks, but no thanks, and you're out the door. And in fact, I looked this up yesterday. For a company to replace me, and I don't mean me, I'm saying general, to replace an employee, 60 to 75% of your salary is a cost. And overall, it's over 200% to replace an employee because you have to look at the hiring cost, the training cost, the customer relationships, the internal relationships, the productivity, and all the things. So by the time you get done, it may cost you, and the new employee is probably going to make more than the old one. So when you start adding in all that stuff, it's more costly to the business. But the business will not let you know that. The business will continue to say, hey, Steve, if you don't do X, you don't work the extra shift a week, you don't get so many widgets done, you don't do whatever you're supposed to do, we're going to have a talk. They don't
The
tell you what the
ti-
talk is, but they
yeah,
imply.
and the title of that too. What I experienced was they wanted the older employees out who had tenure.
Hmm.
They forced us out. They were doing things to kick us out so they
Right.
can bring in younger
Hmm.
employees who, for whatever reason, I guess they feel like they could work better, um, fresher brains. I don't know, but there's tens of thousands of reasons why these corporations would say and do that. But that is a thing.
Sure it is.
And yeah, and to what you say, right, it ties on to that is that, that adds extra stress and pressure to
Mhm.
employees, who could, work the extra 60, 70 hours a week to put themselves at risk of what we're discussing
Yep.
in this episode, right? Because if you think about it, all that ties together, your age, the stress, the pressure from home, from work. And, I want to mention this too, is that people go on vacation to try to relax, right?
Hmm.
But then you need a vacation from the vacation because you're so stressed from the vacation.
Correct. It's
And
true.
it adds to it, right? Yeah.
It
So
is
that
true.
just adds more to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of things based on what you just said. When I was coming out of college, and I'm sure that the industry has not changed. I have an accounting degree. Okay, don't like accounting, but it was a great business background, so I went into a different field. But for somebody who comes out with an accounting degree, and again, other professions have the similar types, in order for you to become a CPA, you must do 2 years in one of the larger firms that qualifies for you to take the exam and then to get a job afterwards. But for those 2 years, you are doing stupid hours, travel, no vacations that they're going to take, and beat you into the ground, knowing that 90 plus percent of that incoming class of employees, when they graduate, are going to quit or be fired. They want that 5 or 10% who are going to go on to become partners. And it's just a revolving door. And they do that on purpose. One of my neighbors just graduated last month with a nursing degree. Really smart guy, um, good grades, the whole bit. And he got an internship in New York City. But he started his internship this week. They're already giving him the crazy hours, the off shift. So he's working like the 8 to 8, I'm sorry, the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. I mean, all the real crap because they know their existing employees won't do that. So you're coming in, they know they're going to go through the turnover, but if they can again find that 5, 10% that stick, that's all they
Right.
want,
Yeah.
you know? So that's a challenge. Um,
I think it's amazing, right? How they force that attitude of, well, if you don't do it, we'll find somebody else that will.
right.
That's the truth.
It is. It
No
is.
matter what company, no matter what position,
Yep.
we don't care. You don't want to do
And
it,
the
we'll find somebody
problem
else.
in this economy, because people are hurting so badly, if you sit there and say, hey, Chuck, you know what? You want me to do the 50 hours a week. You want me to travel. You want me to do everything, and I'm not getting paid for it. I don't want your job. And Chuck's answer to Steve is, okay, who's next? They don't
Yeah.
care. See, in the 90s, when there were more jobs than people,
Yeah.
they had to give you to get you to join their company. They had to be not buddy buddy, but they had to give you the salary. They had to make sure they gave you the vacation, the sign on bonus, because more jobs than people, they couldn't have the jobs unfilled.
Yeah.
But it's the other way around now. Now there's more people than jobs, and they know it. So they play the game.
Yep.
They
Yeah, it's
all
interesting you
do.
mentioned that how it's flipped because, back in the day, they needed you. Now they don't need you.
Right.
They don't care.
So,
But I think what's happening now though is the quality of people. So now we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that they want to hire someone with a degree but no experience. They
right.
don't know the job. But you have a guy that's got experience but no degree. We don't want to talk to you because we don't think you're gonna cut it. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, the guy who has a degree but no experience coming out these days, first of all, they want more money, which they don't deserve, but they want more money. Then they have to learn the job, learn the business, the contacts, the internal, the external. They have to learn. That could be 6 to 12 months based on what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But if you take the person who is already experienced, yes, you're going to pay them more based on age, based on tenure. They may make more money, the benefits based on age. But what you're gaining is the work
Yeah.
ethic. You're
Yep.
gaining the experience, the connections, all the things that people will do for them because they know how to talk to people, get things done.
Yeah. 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 I've run into some really good people overall, different generations, um, older, younger. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how, you can have that that opinion of people that you think, oh, this young kids going to talk to me and they're not going to really know anything. But it's amazing how some people are very smart in every different age bracket. I used to have that, held against these Gen Zs and all about Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen Z, they suck. Well, a lot of them do, but there's a lot of other generations, a lot of people suck too.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are good people out there in every
Mhm.
generation who want to work, who are smart and want to do a good job,
Yes.
you know? Yeah.
And I agree 100%. From an employer perspective, you have an open for some role. How many people do you go through to find that good person?
Yeah.
When you have something you need done now, you don't have a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month just to find somebody and then train them. So you're
Yeah.
going to take the person who may not be really that great because you need it done now. Yes, you're
Right.
going to regret it later, but you're worried about now. And
Yeah.
that perpetuates the problem.
Right. And that ties right back to what we're talking about, right? With this whole Karoshi thing, right? It's like
Mhm.
everybody is affected by it, whether you're coming out
Mhm.
of, college at 22 or 18 out of high school, whatever, or at my age, 55, about to be 56, you're older. It affects us all different, but yet
Mhm.
it's the same thing because it's stress.
Yes.
And, no matter who you are, what you're going through, you're going to have this problem. And what are we doing about it, right? What is corporate America, small business America? What do you do about it, right? How do you combat this?
So one thing with stress is it impacts you on the job. So maybe you can't work the hours that you used to. The quality of work starts to go down. You get frustrated in your interactions with your peers and your superiors. So that hurts you on the job. But then when you leave the job and you go home, can you really separate the stress on the job and the stress home?
How
Because
many
if
people
now
take
if you
work home with them, right? Yeah,
yeah, you bring it home, now it,
yeah,
it could be your partner, whatever that is. Again, trying not to be judgmental. So, whatever your partner is or whoever your partner is, do you still have that relationship? What about kids? It impacts across the board. And when the job is stressful and you come home and it's stressful, there's no break from the stress.
yeah.
And then it just feeds on itself and it gets worse. Now, the
Mhm.
mental side of that, there's somebody I know from being on LinkedIn, and he does what the generic term he's calling it is workplace safety. But it really comes down to is how do you protect people on the job from the guns and the knives and whether it's internal, external, um, the stress, the employee who just goes crazy one day. What do you look for the warning signs of somebody starting to stress out? It's all the upfront, and there's a word for you. You can prepare for it. Um, I forget there's a word for it, but instead of waiting for it to happen, prepare for it up front. And
Yeah,
there's a word I keep forgetting. But
yeah,
how are you preparing? What are the telltale, to your point, what are the telltale signs of someone who is starting to slip a little bit? How can you get them help? Is the employer providing the help? Or is he or she ignoring it, hoping it will go away, and hoping is not a good solution?
yeah. What's amazing is, just a short 23 years ago, I was in the customer service
Mm,
call center industry. And oh, how it's changed in 23 years. It's not a lot of
mm,
time, but it's completely changed. Back in the day, I'd sit down with employees, talk to them, figure it out, give them a break. We work together.
Mhm.
I don't know what they do today. Can you sit down and have this conversation? Do you send them off to a wellness clinic? I don't know.
I- If you don't
Yeah,
treat the person like a person
yeah,
and give them the help they need, it can only get worse. It's not going to get better.
yeah,
You know, I don't know. Again, we're not doctors. I don't know what the answer is.
yeah,
But you have to treat a person as a person
yeah,
and look for those signs. I don't know if it means on a rotating basis, get just the company has to pay, the business has to pay for this, which could get expensive. But
yeah.
maybe once a month, it's a required half day off. Go talk to somebody. You
You
know,
know, I talked to somebody the other day, and I know this is still on topic, but it's kind of a little bit off, but it kind of ties what we're talking about. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were just had a little conversation. It was cool because we both agreed and said it shouldn't be hard for us to live. Housing shouldn't be that difficult. Gas and electric, your basic needs should not be difficult at all. What
right?
you want to smoke, you want to go to a concert, you want to have an elaborate dinner, that's where to hit your pocket. That's where you should pay dearly. What do you think?
There's got to be some way to release the stress and the energy.
Yeah,
Um, and like you
yeah,
said, everybody's different. Some
yeah,
people like to smoke, some people like to drink, some people like to whatever they like to do. And there is no right or wrong, and that's okay.
yeah.
Can you penalize somebody for wanting to do that? I don't know. I don't
What are we
know.
really penalizing them? We're giving us the basic needs at a good fraction of the cost to survive, right? So we're able to survive. But if you want extracurricular things, well, then we have to pay more for that because, well, that's part of life, right? It's just something I threw, it's something we were throwing around with talking about that I thought was kind of interesting. Not really penalizing you because you're a drinker and I'm a smoker and blah, blah, blah. But just in general, I thought it was pretty neat that we both kind of had the same idea. Like, hey, I think that would kind of be pretty cool if we can survive in the world. Oh, but you want to do extracurricular? It's going to cost you more.
But so where do you draw the line between what's normal versus what's extracurricular? Where do you draw the line? And
Exactly.
is eating a hamburger regular? Is eating the first level up steak regular? Is eating the filet mignon regular? What do you draw the line? And then again, the point that you said before is who pays for it. Some people don't
Yeah.
have the money. May want to, but they don't have the money.
But they will have the money now because, our expenses will be less because we can afford to live. We can afford to have housing. We can afford to have gas and electric, right? You know,
Yeah, I'm
don't
not
think too
sure.
deep in it. It was just a thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's going to pay for all your creature comforts though, but so that you can. Um,
Right.
I don't know. No,
Right.
but I do think people should, where they can, they should go out um, and work. And a lot of people do. I mean, I don't want to beat on anybody because that's not my intention. And a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah,
people do. Um,
yeah.
but one of the things that I still, and this definitely is a tangent. So you know what? I'm not going to go there. I'm just not. It's going to just go off the deep end. I'm not doing that. Okay.
But I will tell you though, the biggest thing I hear, and I'm sure you hear it too, the biggest thing I hear on a daily basis, the biggest problem is living, the rent.
Yeah.
That is killing your average American is being killed right now
Mhm.
with rent
Yeah.
because they can charge what they want and get away with it,
Yep. Yep.
and that right there alone is causing enough stress to really
Mhm.
put you in this
Yeah.
situation of,
Yeah.
on top of work stress, close to death.
The challenge, and I'm not putting down anything or anybody or whatnot. Housing, and again, I'm here in New York City. Or just outside New York City. Housing is so expensive to buy a house that it's really pushing a lot of people out of the market. Now, the people that own houses, that own apartment buildings, they know that. So because they know you can't afford the down payment and the mortgage payment, they're going to turn around and jack up the rates.
Yeah.
And you really have no choice because where else do you go?
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's all across the country. It's not just New York, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I have heard, and again, I have never experienced this. So again, this is pure hearsay. I have heard that a lot of people are starting to get into the RVs. They're getting into, and if you can't afford like a big RV, because they could be expensive, and yes, you own it, you pay it off like a mortgage. People are getting into like the smaller extended vans where they put, um, they redo the whole inside. So they put a bed in, they have a small, a small stove, a small fridge, a small toilet, a small something, and then they figure out a way to take their showers. But this way they can live somewhere, they can travel around. So if you can live in an internet based business, or if your job allows you to work remotely, which
Yeah.
I guess is pretty much internet based, um,
Yeah.
then people are going in and they're starting to travel. So they get to see the country, they work their 8 hour day, and they're in traveling. So if you come across a town in the middle of, I don't know, Utah or wherever you are, and you find this beautiful town, pull over, find the local place that has hookup connections so you can get water, electric, all that stuff. I was out last year, 2 years ago. When I was working for the limo company, and I had a job way out in the middle of the country somewhere. I think it was Pennsylvania, but it was in like the woods. And in the middle of this, all of a sudden, this clearing opened up. Beautiful view, the mountains, the lake, and they had paved a very large lot. And you could bring in your camper, your van, whatever you want to bring in for like $20 a night. You bring it in, you hook up to electric, you hook up to the water for the bathroom. They had a place for a shower, and you were good to go. They had internet. So for $20 a night, it's only what, $600 a month. Heck of a lot cheaper than an apartment. Beautiful
Yeah.
view. And
Yeah.
people would stay there a month, 2 months at a time. And then they'd
Yeah.
pick up and find the next one.
Yeah. The most problem with a lot of places that allow RVs, you can only stay one night and
Hmm,
they have to move on. And there's a
okay.
big stipulation with that, one night only.
It depends on where you go.
Yeah. Yep. But a lot of, because I've done a lot of research on this, and a lot of places, it's one night.
Wow.
Yep.
Because
And
something
if
I
you
know.
do, and if you do longer, it costs a lot. They do have weeklies and monthlies, but it costs a lot.
Wow. Because
And
one
I
of my
think that's
business,
to stamp out from people like that who are doing that,
because one of my business partners he's got the pickup truck with the RV attached to the back.
Yeah.
And he pulls it, and he said he stays, depending again where you're going and stuff,
Wherever
a
you go.
month, 2 months at a shot. I don't know what it cost, but he loves it. He has
Yeah.
his wife, his two young kids that they homeschool, and the dog,
Yep.
and they go around, and it's a
Yep.
really nice RV, and that's what they do.
I'm working on it. That's my plan.
Yeah,
I'm working on it.
a lot of people are starting to do that because
Yeah. I'm trying.
it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
It,
Everything's so
it really
expensive.
is. You're
Yeah.
not really paying real estate taxes.
Yep.
So you figure whatever your mortgage would be, take out the real estate tax. It's principal, interest, insurance, which you're going to pay anyway,
Right.
but put it on something that's less expensive. You can take it with you, travel around so you don't need a hotel room.
Yep.
You got to eat anyway. You're going to drive somewhere, so chances are you need gas anyway. So you're really not putting that much additional expense,
Yeah.
if anything, although maybe it's the nights to connect to water and all that stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. And you pay for the area that you're setting your RV in.
right, right.
It's
But
a
to bring
pad,
it
what do they
back
call it? The
around,
pad, so I think they call it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But to
Yep.
bring it back around, that's the way that a lot of people are starting to get away with. I don't want the stress. I don't want
Yep.
to be in an office.
Yep.
If I'm working and I'm working remote and I get the job done, I can work for 2 hours, Go take a walk on down by the lake for an hour and then come back and do another 2 hours. Go take another walk. Go play with the dog, play with the kids,
Yeah.
and then come back and
Yep.
do it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we do have to find a balance with this because we are killing ourselves by overworking
We are. We
and
are.
we really are. Yep.
There's an expression that says you can't take it with you, and you can't.
Yeah.
So if somebody is in a position that they're working those crazy hours and they have all that crazy stress, if you cannot change your situation, and sometimes you can't, but if you can change your situation, the best thing that you can do, if you can think straight enough and you have the time to think straight, is to set up your spouse, your kids, leave a legacy.
Yeah.
Leave a legacy so that the people that you leave it to will not be in the same position you are.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can leave somebody is be better than me. Don't get caught in what I was caught up in, the rat race, as they say. Don't get caught up in the rat race.
You got it. Yeah. If anybody wants to, who's watching this, wants to, comment or reach out to us to give us some tips and tricks on anything that they've learned to keep themselves from croaking, from working to death, let's
Yeah.
see, Steve, 516-727-2294. Reach out to Steve,
Yeah. Reach out to Chuck, 410-935-6132.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the time,
Reach
leave
us,
a
man.
message out.
Yeah, leave a message, right? Well, you probably had to with me. I got my unknown caller silence, so I can't be bothered.
Now, I just because we all are all busy and with all the crazy calls that we get, I do let most calls that I don't know the number go. Just to put it out there, I do let most calls go to voicemail, and then I listen to the voicemail. Then
Yeah,
I call back.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah, if
Yep,
there's a voice message, I call back because
yep,
typically the spam calls don't leave the message, so you know, so we're okay
right.
that way. But yeah,
You
if you
got
do
it.
call, I promise I will call you back. I promise.
Absolutely. Yep, and email, right? The Chuck at QACteam.com.
And
Steve at.
Steve at stevekentfs.com.
You got it.
Yeah,
Steve, thanks again for another
no,
awesome
absolutely.
podcast. I love this. I hope somebody finds value in this and can reach out to us with
Yeah.
their take on what they feel, about burnout and how to save yourself from the work death, they're calling Karoshi, which is pretty interesting. An interesting topic.
It is. It is. Do what
Yeah.
you can to try to speak to somebody outside of work.
Yeah.
Um, Go see a professional. Nobody has to know, you know, it's going to be confidential. So it's only you and the person you're talking to. But if you don't let that stress out, it'll eat at you inside. And
Yeah.
long term, that is not good.
You got it.
Yeah.
Steve, thanks
All right.
again. It's been
Thanks, Chuck.
awesome. Hope you
Yep.
have a great night.
Thank you.
You got some extracurricular activities you're doing
Yeah,
tonight?
yeah. So, again, I live in New York, so I'm going to the Yankee games tonight, the Yankee game tonight. So I'm
That's
excited
awesome.
about that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Enjoy the
Yeah,
game. And
thank you.
I get to go tomorrow to the cookout for Ant's Army. I did a
Nice. Yeah, you told me
podcast for
about
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. So that'll be at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Hopefully the
yeah,
weather permits. It's supposed to
yeah.
rain, but we'll see, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm supposed to do
Good
that
stuff.
tomorrow and have a
Yeah,
good time and hang out and
yeah.
good people and good food and have a
Good.
great time.
You got it. All right. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Hey,
All
have a
right.
great weekend, Steve,
You
and
too.
we'll talk soon.
You got it. Thanks, Chuck. Take
Take
care,
care,
bud.
bud.
Bye-bye.
See you, bye.
You've been watching the Friday at 4 podcast series with your host Charles Luttrell and co-host Steve Kent. Thanks for watching.